Welcome to Make Your Money Matter with Brad Barrett, the show that aims to change the way you think about wealth management. Brad is a certified financial advisor, established radio host, and author of Retire Right. He is a managing director and partner at One Capital Management, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm managing over $4 billion for clients across the nation. Brad and his team are dedicated to helping clients protect and preserve their assets so they can reach their investment and retirement goals. And now, your host of Make Your Money Matter, Brad Barrett.
Welcome in to Make Your Money Matter. I'm your host, Brad Barrett. I'm also a managing director and partner here at One Capital Management. Today on our show, we're going to talk about 3 ways to recession-proof your retirement. Everyone's been watching and listening to the news and media outlets, obviously with last week's federal rate hike increase, which again was kind of baked into the market. We're going to talk about this as we talk about recession. Now, many of you who've watched and listened to the show know that this is something we've been talking about for really the past probably 12 to 18 months. And I'm going to pick up on some things today that I've said before, kind of rehash some items. And I'm going to talk again about 3 things that we're going to go through that I think everyone can do to recession-proof your environment. But before we get started, make sure to go to our website at onecapital.com. You can click on the media tab. There you can download and subscribe to the Make Your Money Matter show so you don't miss a single episode. And friends, I'd ask you to leave us a comment, give us a review. It's always good to hear feedback. And with that, actually, last week I had a comment, and I love this. Finally, someone data checking me, if you will. I made a comment 2 weeks ago on one of our shows that I was kind of a loose comment around investing, that a leopard can't change their stripes. And I was actually commented saying, hey, just so you know, Brad, leopards don't have stripes, they have spots. And I was like, thank you. I'm not perfect, friends. Shocking, I know, but it's good to get feedback. So please, I really love that we have that kind of commentary and feedback. And with that, today I want to focus again, like I mentioned, on the recession proofing of your retirement. I know many of you out there, clients listening, just active listeners, whether you're wherever you're at right now, it's important to know that the comments that are going on in the news, in the media, it's really important that we focus that attention to your own life. And a lot of it's noise. Sometimes I'll be fair and honest and say that, look, a lot of it is noise. And so our job as financial advisors, a good one, really is supposed to disseminate some of the stuff that you're hearing, seeing, knowing, reading, whatever it might be, believing, and really understand like, hey, before you let that settle on you and you change your course or alter your plan, make sure that it's real, make sure that it's factual, and make sure that you're not already doing something to adapt or change to it. For example, on today's show, I want to talk about a recession. Obviously, with the increase in federal rates last week by 25 basis points, which again, the market had already anticipated, as well as Powell's verbiage, if you will, and vernacular, basically stating that likely it'll be on hold, and we'll see how that all plays out. But I think the notion of this soft landing that people have been talking about, and you've heard me say over the past summer, some of the recession comments I brought up with regards to 6 indicators, and most of us know the one, which is 2 negative GDP quarters. But I want to sum up one thing that many of you heard me say quite often on the show over the past year, and many clients listening have heard me say in our review meetings, is this. The majority of the recessions called in the past 40 years have been called in the 11th hour. What does that mean? That means that basically the Federal Reserve comes out and says, or actually I should say this, the National Bureau of Economic Research, yeah, that's a mouthy one, the NBER, they are the official arbiter of a recession. And when they call a recession, if you look at the last 11 in particular, 10 of the 11 have been called in what economists are saying the 11th hour, meaning we've already gone through the recession, and then at the end, they're like, hey guys, we're in a recession. And I'm sharing this simply to say this, and you've heard me say this a lot over the past year, is if we all just agreed we're in a recession right now, would it change what we already know that we've been seeing daily? It would not change the fact that we're paying more at the gas pump. It would not change the fact that we have a consumer sentiment right now in the economy that's just not all that high. No one's really, have this high hopes for tomorrow. A lot of it's like treading water. These are all been happening over the past 12, 15 months. So someone saying and labeling it's a recession doesn't really change that fact. And I'd argue that, and my point I'm bringing this up here is being ready for change when it happens, not afterwards, but before. Essentially, being proactive versus reactive. And with that said, I want to talk about 3 things that I've been talking about with clients, and many clients who are listening right now might have heard me say this, but what we are doing here at One Capital Management for our clients from the investment side, as well as from the advisory side or the planning side. Now, the biggest thing I want to start off with here, and honestly, if you even stop listening after this, I want to make sure this is said. Stay the course, don't overreact, think long term. I'm going to say that again. Stay the course, don't overreact, think long term. Now, anyone who knows me is probably rolling their eyes right now. Yeah, I see you. I caught you. And I'm sharing that because you're probably going like, dude, you've said that so many times. I get it. You're like the most boring financial advisor on planet Earth. I hear you. But you know what? It's the truth. Following this kind of advice, as boring and as not sexy as it might be, during times of economic uncertainty can actually do wonders for your life and specifically for your money and for your retirement. Don't mistake it as an invitation, though, I want to be clear about this, to sit back and do nothing. The conversation of stay the course, don't overreact, think long term doesn't mean sit on your hands. This isn't the set it and forget it mentality. You've heard me say this before, but one term I like to use when I'm talking with people or I'm at events is actively waiting. Now, they're converse words, right? They're almost like they go together like oil and water to some people when they're hearing it. But here's what I mean. Actively waiting meaning there are moves you can make now while things are volatile that can pay off significantly down the road. So when you say stay the course, if you think about it, staying the course, for example, is continuing to invest in your retirement plan, continuing to have quarterly or semi-annual reviews or quick phone calls or catch-ups with an advisor. Those things matter. So it's not just sitting and doing nothing and just, turn your back to it. That's not what I mean about stay the course and don't overreact. Overreacting means doing too much of the wrong thing in this, what I'm saying here. But if you think about it in general, it's also talking about reacting. It's okay to react, just making sure you're doing it within the long-term plan that you have. And that leads me into number 1, having a financial pro or advisor look over your plan. And again, for those that rolled their eyes earlier, you're likely rolling your eyes again. I get it. I know this is boring, but you know what? This works, friends. And sometimes, maybe I'm speaking to someone this morning that needs this reminder. You know those genius billionaires out there? Hey, guess what? They have financial advisors. A guy like Tiger Woods, probably arguably the best golfer of all time, he has a caddy. These great examples across the board of billionaires to athletes, they have trainers, they have advisors, they have caddies. And by the way, they're paying them much more and handsomely for different things. So the whole thing of paying for value matters when you're also looking at this world. It's always a good idea during these times to look over your long-term financial plan with an expert, with an advisor. And that's true even if you've previously developed a plan with the help of an advisor. You may find that your plan needs some adjusting. Again, back to the idea of not overreacting, but making sure that your plan is in compliance, if you will, with what's going on with the current times. Something I do with our clients, and we reach out as much as we can, but it's a two-way street. Remember, for those clients listening right now, the more I hear from you, the better. I want to make sure that we review items and discussions in previous reviews, whether it was a year ago or 2 years ago. It matters because, there might be things coming up in your personal life, in your work life, in your overall retirement life as you get older and closer to retirement. All these things are good conversations for adjustments and or even just plain review of your finances.
Stay connected. Get frequent updates on the show. Follow Brad Barrett and Make Your Money Matter on most social media platforms. And catch full episodes of Make Your Money Matter streaming now on our YouTube channel. To schedule your no-obligation appointment, go to onecapital.com or call 805-410-5454.
And by the way, I'll say this for those of you without a financial advisor. Understanding this, a financial advisor is easier to find than you think, all right? And it's important to make sure you find 3 things. One that's credentialed, someone who's got a CFP, CFA, someone who actually cares about learning more to help you. Now, by the way, be careful of someone with alphabet soup, right? You find someone with like 20 letters behind their name, they're likely spending more time in a book than they are in the real world. I digress. But number two, find someone who's experienced, someone who's been around the block. A good advisor, the best analogy I can give sometimes is they're your co-pilot. You're the driver of the car. It's your car, your destination. Your idea of having an advisor should be someone sitting shotgun with you, available to help you navigate the potholes of this course, who's also seen and been to the destination that you're trying to get to, which for many is financial freedom, having the ability to sustain your investments and your savings throughout your life. Ideally, the same amount of time you had working, you'll have in retirement. So making sure that you do think long-term, that's how you want to think about someone. And then thirdly, you want to find someone who's a fiduciary. And all that really means, it's a word that's been thrown around in the past 10 years just because of some Department of Labor, updates, let's say. But we've been doing it here at One Capital since inception. Fiduciary just means acting in the best interest of you, the client, which I'll be honest, I chuckle sometimes because it's like, that's what we've been doing since inception. That's the morally right thing to do. But obviously in any industry, you have a bunch of knuckleheads out there that makes some industry create a sanctioning body that then says, okay, you have to do this. And we're going to call that a fiduciary. But the reality is those three things: experienced, credentialed, and a fiduciary. Find that person. That's number one to recession proofing your retirement. And number two would then just dovetail right off of that, getting a little bit more in the weeds, which is protecting your portfolio through diversification. Right or wrong, we live in a big bad world. And understanding that a global economy is important to a global diversified portfolio. And here at One Capital, which is all I can really speak about, here we are a global asset manager who understands diversification between sectors, between industries. That matters when you have volatility domestically and abroad. This also matters, by the way, and one thing I said a couple weeks ago with regards to the conversation around the US dollar, which has been kicked up again, nothing totally new here, but it's also a way to protect yourselves from dollar demand issues as well. Invest in the world, own the world, if you will, protecting your portfolio through diversification, through rebalancing, which basically adjusts your portfolio ongoing through active management to making sure that the allocation we set out for you, we are sticking to. That matters. And a lot of advisors out there aren't actually doing that. So making sure you speak with your advisor, a little bit of education here today on number one, when you find that advisor, speak with them about, hey, are you rebalancing my portfolio through actively managing the diversified approach? That matters. And third, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, but three that I talk about with clients quite often, and this comes right off of number two, this was actually in an order on reason, was to be able to invest in certain inflation protection environments inside of a diversified portfolio. Things like real estate, things like commodities, things like treasury inflation protection securities or TIPS. Those are also things that we can invest in as well. Finding dividend and value companies, right? Things that pay you, that work almost in a positive way or an uncorrelated way, if you will, to a negative market or to a recession environment or a volatile environment. Having these conversations with your advisor, understanding that there are environments in a diversified portfolio that A, should be diversified and rebalanced and actively managed, like I mentioned, through an advisor, as I mentioned in number one. And then thirdly, making sure that inside that diversification, there is some sort of, inflation protection inside there. Those are all things you can add to your portfolio and to your retirement life to help recession-proof, if you will, your retirement. And on the show, before we end, I want to add something here every week. As always, I like to, keep the show fresh. It's been going on a couple years here, but I'm going to add each week some items that have happened this week in history. Like many of you probably have seen who've watched and listened to me. I'm a kind of a freak about stats and history. So I want to share a couple this week in histories every week. This week in history, in 1877, get this, Rutherford B. Hayes has the first phone installed in the White House. You may care, you may not. I don't know. I found it interesting. 1940 of this week, Winston Churchill became the first prime minister of Britain. And in 1965 of this week, Warren Buffett gains a controlling interest in Berkshire Hathaway, and the shares were trading at that time at less than $20 per share. I hope you enjoyed some of those. I know I do sometimes. Sometimes I find them fascinating, sometimes I don't, but I'm gonna share that each week. I wanna thank you for listening to the Make Your Money Matter show. And remember, before acting on anything discussed today, speak with a financial advisor near you, which again, I mentioned, by the way, in option number 1 about recession-proofing your environment. Again, speak with them about your specific situation. And again, if you'd like our help, you can reach us at onecapital.com or give us a call, 805-410-5454. And until next week, always remember to make your money matter.
The information in this show is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration a listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision.